Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you all so much for joining. My name is Reza. I'll be the host for this event. Inshallah, we want to keep this a collaborative conversation, something that's interactive. Alhamdulillah, we're joined by a very great expert, dear friend of mine that I've known for, I want to say, almost 10 years. I've known Brother Ali. I'm very excited to have him here with us. So inshallah, we hope to keep this collaborative. If you have cameras, keep the cameras on, if possible. And then, we have the reaction buttons as well. So please, be interactive, be engaging, in addition. So we can hopefully make this something that we can all benefit from and really learn from Brother Ali here, and also each other as well. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Brother Ali. Brother Ali Imami is a graduating PhD candidate at McGill University, whose current research focuses on addressing difficult and open problems in artificial intelligence and machine learning, and will be beginning a tenure-track professorship in computer science as of August. He has also been actively involved in applying his innovations to a variety of real-world domains and sectors, including those in transportation, healthcare, robotics, games, and conversational agents. His research has thus far contributed to 15 peer-reviewed publications and over 300 citations across various disciplines. Prior to his PhD, Ali acquired his MSc at McGill University, where he worked in collaboration with Cambridge University on the development of the artificial pancreas, an all-in-one diabetes management system that promises to significantly improve the health of people living with type 1 diabetes. In parallel, Ali is a startup co-founder, as well as a personal trainer and influencer, with an emphasis and passion on holistic, natural bodybuilding and fitness. Without further ado, Brother Ali, it is all yours.
Share my screen. No echo, hopefully, and my screen is shared. Can everybody hear me and see my screen? Perfect. So everybody can hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you so much, Reza, for that introduction, and as well for all the organizers of MohebbanYouth. I'm really flattered that you guys, and honored that you guys gave me this platform and opportunity to speak today. Different people that are attending, I see from different groups of people that I know. I see a few of my really close, dear friends, probably know me best as the goofball in their group chat. The bohlul, they call me. If you guys know that cultural reference, kudos to you. And then I see a few of my trainees, and I actually am really happy to see people that I don't know yet, so that you have a bit more of a tabula rasa, clean slate as to who I am. And the kind of picture that I want to paint for you is not one really that even is reflected by the biography, as grateful as I am about that biography that Reza provided, but more that I'm someone that had a really, really profound experience with Ramadan in 2020. And it truly, truly changed my life. And in such a way that even in attendance today, I think if there will be 10 to 15 of you, to be honest with you, I've been more nervous about giving this collaborative discussion of a talk, which should be very informal, versus, as my dear friends know, the various research talks and teaching talks I've needed to give in the last month. I've not been more nervous than I am about this, because if I feel even one of you can be even slightly inspired or moved, or will take something from the experience I had about Ramadan last year that changed my life, if I could say something right or something wrong, if that can make or break someone's experience, that to me is extremely weighty. It has a lot of weight on me. It's like holding a vase and tremoring one way or the other and breaking that vase. And so for that reason, the number of times I rolled in my sleep last night was a lot. And with the advent of, for example, the incidents in Texas, that shouldn't have made or broke the way that we want to react in the world. We should have already been aware that mental health is a problem that Muslim youth were never robust to, just on the account of being Muslim. And it's a serious issue that we need to address as a community. And so I know that the experiences I share actually may be able to help certain youth that are in need, as we'll see, as I believe really fitness in terms of physical health is a window, an opportunity to hone the health spiritually of oneself and mentally. And so because of that, I feel that it's an extremely important responsibility to deliver it well. And I just do a dua that all the ego and the self-proclamation, things that are required often in interviews, are wiped clean for this 1 hour, and that I cannot obfuscate the message I want to give, so that people can truly benefit from the experience that I gained in this Ramadan. And I wanted to say that because I guess there were different perceptions about what kind of talk I would give. I promise it will be lighthearted and fun, and all of the detailed inquiries you have about how to make muscle gain throughout Ramadan will be addressed. But I will show you that I want to redirect that talk and say that the wider goal is that, and the beauty you'll see, and it's something that I'm slowly encountering as a realization about this dunya, about this world, is that there's no goal that is too small. That even the tiniest goal that you set, if that is just, I want to have a little bit more muscle, or I want to read a book, a single book, that could actually tip the scale and actually have this effect where literally all the other goals that you didn't even know you had can be achieved as well, spiritually as well. I really, really believe that. And I don't want to just speak in terms of rhetoric today. I want to give you concrete examples of how that happened in my life, so that hopefully you can be inspired and set goals and attain them in order for that to happen in yours. So that was my spiel. I know it was a long one, but now hopefully we can really give concrete examples and really dig into this collaborative discussion. I'm going to actually invite you guys to interact and ask questions throughout the talk as well, inshallah. So let's begin. So what I actually like doing is I'm going to make it in the spirit of a research talk, this talk, and I'm going to show you a bit into the realm and the glimpse of how I had to do this when I was giving research talks and lectures. And that shouldn't hopefully mean that it's going to be boring, because one thing we've learned as educators in COVID times is that you're not forced to focus and listen to our talks. You can listen to a YouTube video. So we really have to capture your attention. So you're going to also see some of the techniques we use as educators in order to keep you entertained and really captivated in the discussion. So the first thing I want to do is I want to clearly define what the problem today is and what claims I'm going to make about it. The problem is, how do you reach a goal, but not just reach the goal, but sustain it and balance it with the rest of your life? Let me just get this pen to work. Yes. So it's no achievement actually with very many domains in the world today. Let's specifically look at fitness, that we have gone strides in terms of the progress we've made in terms of nutrition and science. It doesn't take much Googling to look at pictures of bodybuilders in the 1900s, early 1900s, and them now, to see that in terms of reaching that kind of Greek god stature, they've done it. But certain problems have still kind of confounded this idea of reaching a goal, at least in the fitness world, and we'll see in other realms as well. And that first one is to sustain a goal that you've set. So in terms of fitness, we see that one of the common issues is that someone can achieve that goal if they want to have low body fat percentage, or even let's transcend beyond fitness. If someone wants to have a good relationship with their spouse, right? The whole Disney story is you marry them and then you don't actually make the marriage sustain itself. And then not only that, but we see in the fitness world, so like the person will be on season for maybe a month and take a series of pictures and then distribute those pictures to the year, where 11 months of the year, they're actually looking horrible. And another thing is, at what cost? Oftentimes they've lost absolute touch with so many other domains in their life, their personal lives, their spiritual lives, and they can't actually do it. So really, we really haven't solved this problem, because we reach a goal, but we can't sustain it. And so it's a momentary kind of acquisition of a goal. And so I want to make a claim. I want to make a claim that we are at the brink of a revolution. And that is that we already had the spiritual tools with Islam, but we really didn't have the science that kind of reached its point in terms of nutrition and fitness in order to do this one thing, and that's to solve the problem of actually sustaining a goal and balancing it, right? So it's interesting. So now let me give a lighthearted kind of anecdote. I was in a locker room a week and a half ago. The one day I actually went back to a public gym. A bunch of guys were talking about all the things that they were doing in order to look good. They were throwing out words. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but these are actually hormones that they're injecting. Anavar, SARMs. And I was sitting there, and then when they looked at me, they asked me, which hormone are you using? And I said to them, nothing yet, but I'm going to be using Ramadan soon. Like, they thought I was joking. They thought, this was just some sort of rhetoric. But I really will make the claim today, and I'll give you concrete examples of how I actually use Ramadan, not only to gain muscle and to sustain it year long, but I was able to do this in balance and in fact achieve excellence, or really a 180 at least, in terms of the other domains in my world where I was really suffering from. So we're going to dive in, inshallah, and see how and I make the claim specifically that it's Ramadan that provides us with that perfect opportunity for setting these goals. And I'm going to give evidence and prove what inherent features of Ramadan are just so perfect with someone that wants to set a goal. And it almost forces you to set a goal and achieve it. Whether that be fitness, which we'll delve into. We'll do a deep dive into fitness today. But you'll see that the analogy will hold with so many different facets in your life. Now, I want to motivate this with probably 2-3 minutes that I believe will capture everything I want to say better than I can say it. So in case everything goes to shambles and I can't, as I said, that dua I made wasn't actually materialized, Dr. Panahian, who's a real favorite of mine in terms of a sheikh who really says these things with such a beautiful kind of, in such a beautiful manner, in 2 or 3 minutes, he's going to give a preface of what I mean when I say how potentially Ramadan could mitigate these problems. Let me see the volume. Hopefully you guys can hear. Let me see. Oh yes, I'm gonna mute myself on this. Let me do it this way. If you guys can't hear it, then I'll have to skip this beautiful talk.
We can still hear Ali John.
You can hear?
Yeah.
You can hear his talk?
Yeah.
Okay.
هنگام ورود به ماه مبارک رمضان باید احساسمون این باشه که این اولین ماه رمضانی است که داریم می‌بینیم و باید در نظرمون باشه که آخرین ماه رمضانی است که درک می‌کنیم. به ما اینجوری سفارش کردن. واقعاً یک ماه مبارک رمضان میتونه جبران کننده تمام کاستی‌های گذشته انسان و رفع کننده تمام نواقص روحی انسان باشه و یک ماه مبارک رمضان میتونه تأمین کننده و تضمین کننده تمام آینده زندگی انسان باشه. ماه مبارک رمضان فقط برای یک سال نیست، هر بار برای یک عمره. منتها ما کم بهره میبریم ازش. همین اهتمام برای بهره بردن، همین سوز و گداز داشتن برای از دست ندادن این فرصت عظیم خودش مهمترین عامل بهره برداریه. خیلی‌ها سوال میکنن توی ماه مبارک رمضان ما چجوری بهره برداری کنیم از این ماه؟ 10 مرتبه این سوال رو در خانه خدا با اشک و آه بپرسن و چقدر تو دعاها و توی مراقبت‌های مختلفی که بلدن این سوال رو دنبال جوابش بگردن. همه چیز نباید آماده در اختیار انسان باشه. گفت آب کم جو، تشنگی آور به دست تا بجوشد آبت از بالا و پست. خیلی‌ها سوال میکنن توی ماه مبارک رمضان ما چجوری بهره برداری کنیم از این ماه؟ 10 مرتبه این سوال رو در خانه خدا با اشک و آه بپرسن. همین اهتمام برای بهره بردن، همین سوز و گداز داشتن برای از دست ندادن این فرصت عظیم خودش مهمترین عامل بهره برداریه.
Okay. I think I couldn't hear, but yeah, thankfully the subtitles were there. Yeah, it was very, very powerful. When I first heard this, it was really, really touching. I think inshallah, so this was really beautiful in terms of the aesthetics of the speech. I want to really break down and dissect the claims that are being made and the question that's being asked here, right? How can we benefit more from the month of Ramadan? Some of the themes that he covers, inshallah, we'll see it unfold in his words. And, you know, one of the themes was even the act of striving and recognizing that the goals we set in Ramadan will eventually fall short. That is one of the most mysterious blessings of Ramadan itself. So even the act of setting a goal is almost halfway towards achieving the goal, is essentially that. And so today, inshallah, we're going to go through with before I get into the nitty gritties, I want to go through just 3 important preliminaries, I believe. The first one is a sort of sense of my transformation, so you can get a bit of a context of how Ramadan affected me just from last year to this year. And the second part will be just an outline of what I will and won't be able to cover today, as well a really important point. And I think this is one that we're really facing more and more emphatically today. And that's a mishmash and a clash of different sources of information. Especially in fitness, this is a problem. We have 2 owners of supplement stores debating about literally 2 contradictory stances, and and people just referring to literature, and nobody knows what to trust. And this is the case in politics and in religion, and sources of information is a big deal. And I'll present how I digest different sources of information. And in a meta way, it should actually be an opportunity for me to say how you should digest the information I give you today, right? Even at best, if I'm called an expert, there's still a way that you have to weight down what an expert says, because it may or may not apply to you. This is really, really important. So let's begin with who am I? And looking at it a bit more accurately was who wasn't I? So this on the left, excuse my horrible fashion sense as of autumn 2019. Assuming that that wasn't a disaster, there were a number of characteristics that I had that were really, I couldn't emphasize enough how a matter of survival I was at. So number one, physically speaking, at the very shell, I was out of shape. So at the height that I was at, I was essentially obese at 230 pounds. I was 27 years old. At that point, I was a student, and perhaps that's not the issue at that age, but I had no goals in sight. So if you asked me at that point what I wanted to achieve, how I wanted to achieve it, I had no answer whatsoever. And frankly, that wasn't even the way I looked at the world. The way I looked at the world was really a reactive look, is in every day, I'll have to do whatever it takes to make ends meet and just finish my day. In terms of my temperament, I was extremely lethargic. Everything was done at a slow pace. There was absolutely no routine. One morning I'd wake up at 11, I'd snooze, wake up at 12, I'd go to sleep at 2 a.m. I don't know what I would eat the next day. Everything was just a matter of reaction and impulse. And really it was a matter of just surviving. Religion was for me another task. It was another chore that I just had to get done. Sometimes I would get it done, sometimes I wouldn't. In terms of the worshiping, that meant salat, I call these buzzer beater salats. If I could get in a buzzer beater salat, that was great. Check mark. That was all it was. The religion was an end. It was another task. And really, it boils down to me really just barely hanging on. I've danced, I think, a little tactfully around a word here that I don't want to abuse, because it really takes diagnosis and it takes an expert to call someone depressed. I want to say that I was depressed, and perhaps I was. One of the interesting symptoms that only now I recognize was in the morning when I would wake up, I was yearning to go back to sleep because I enjoyed sleep over living. And this is one of the qualities I thought that was normal. I thought everybody faced this. I thought everybody would prefer to go back to sleep. We often see memes about it, like snoozing, and that people just like to sleep. I genuinely just enjoyed sleep over living. Perhaps you can call this one of the big red flags for depression. I didn't know until it changed. So today, just 1 year after that, in terms of my out of shapeness, which is just at the shell, inshallah, we'll see a bit deeper at what kind of percolating effect this had. I've been invited in many fitness opens, natural competitions. My physique, I've lost something like 60 pounds and stayed at lower than 8% body fat without much effort throughout the year. Within the year, to this day, I'm baffled. For someone that had no goals whatsoever, if you told me that in a year from now, you would be getting offers as a professor in artificial intelligence, I truly wouldn't believe you. And now I'm standing these days with offers of professorships. I've started a personal training program. And one of my dearest friends, I've actually founded a startup. One of the key features of my day is every day has a preset daily routine. I know exactly what I'm going to do the next day and how I'm going to achieve it. Another interesting facet that I'm going to dig into is religion has become a means, not an ends. It's the realization that it's the skeleton of the worshiping that I do throughout the day that'll actually allow me to do the other things in the day. So the founding of my day is my salat. And it's a complete turnaround in the mentality that it's a task. It allows me to accomplish my other tasks. I'll give you concrete examples of how that actually looks like in a routine and how you can use that for yourselves. Now, the key part that really amazes me is that the things that I thought were normal, like, not wanting to wake up every morning. I had trouble sleeping before. It's interesting. The only days that I have trouble sleeping in this last year has truly been, I don't want to sound too giddy, but it's because I'm too excited. I want to wake up the next day and start my day. I'm constantly thinking about how excited I am for 5 a.m. to hit so I can pray again and I can start my day. I don't want to sleep. And in just 1 year, that complete transformation happened. And really, it began just from the Ramadan, the 1 month of Ramadan 2020. And it goes back to the words of Dr. Panahian that says, if you only knew that 1 month, all of the holes in your life, it could fill those holes and it could fix you for the rest of your life. If you only treated it that way, like it was your first and last Ramadan. Somehow, subconsciously, I felt it was my last Ramadan. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was like me catching on that I was extremely depressed. So I treated it like my last Ramadan, and it had these effects on me. And inshallah, today I want to dig deeper into unraveling what I did in order to reap some of the benefits. So what I will cover in doing that, because it's for time permitted, is that the other thing I wanted to mention in the preface was that the personal training will have to come to an end since I will start my professional career in a few months. What I really, really think that I'd be remiss not to do would be to completely expose today all of the methodologies and philosophies I do to write programs for others, on my trainees, and for myself, so that it's a matter of, essentially, as the proverb goes, teaching a man how to fish versus giving him the fish. So I want to make it so that by the end of today, you will completely have all of the tools you need in order to have the perfect fitness routine, which could go a very long way, which I argue in my case saved my life in terms of both my physical fitness, but in terms of how I'll show you in terms of my spiritual health as well. So inshallah, I can give you the self-sufficiency to do this all for yourselves and to develop a fitness routine for yourselves that work. The other part will be that I'll specifically show you how Ramadan will allow you to develop such a routine and will allow you to overcome obstacles in any domain. And I'm going to define each of these domains. And then specifically we'll look at the fitness domain and the fitness and the physical domain and how you can use Ramadan to benefit yourself. And yes, as that locker room conversation went, to have effects that hormones won't have on your body in terms of muscle growth, maintaining low fat, and really just feeling healthy and being able to do activities with really, really good health. And inshallah, time permitting, I really want to have a question and answer period where the specific needs and questions you can address to me. And I really want to be an open book today. Absolutely nothing I want to leave. And there's this thing with personal trainers, they like to keep something secret so that they take on clients. As I said, since I'm putting this to a close, I'm going to completely expose every sort of mentality, methodology, and philosophy I've had so that you can start building your own routines as if you're personal trainers on your own. Someone asked you type your questions over here. Yeah, you can type your questions there. I can see them and I can address them throughout the talk. But at the end, you can speak as well and we'll address them. So let's begin. And before that, I'll say that what I won't cover, but I will cover how you'll do this, is I'll give you the backbone of how to build a fitness routine for you, but I won't cover how you actually fine tune those details. As in I won't fine tune them for you today, but I'll tell you how you can fine tune them for yourself. Okay, and the last preliminary that I want to cover quickly is sources of information and breaking each of them down, and how I personally have a hierarchy of how I look at each source of information and how I prioritize each. The first one is scientific literature. Now, we've praised scientific literature enough, so it won't be my job today to do that for you, but there's a lot I could praise about it. Definitely, there is so much that science has given us. As I said, even empirically, we've seen the advances in the fitness world that come from science in terms of the supplements that we've seen, like, for example, isolate protein in terms of things that you should have, even the effects, the different nuanced effects of the macronutrients, macromolecules like protein versus fats versus carbohydrates. Science has given this to all of us. You know, what science essentially boils down to, almost a philosophical analysis of science, it'll give you a conclusion that applies in general to a group of people as a mean estimation, right? To a group, it's more of a generalized kind of conclusion, right? But the things that science lacks and that we should really take with a grain of salt, and this is coming from a scientist amongst groups of scientists I see, is that one thing that we've reached, and this is really a critical point, and it's almost a revolution within science, is the realization that we've been speaking mostly within scientific literature in terms of correlation and not causation. We haven't truly been able to identify causation. Now, there are randomized controlled studies and various factors that we're using in order to try to intervene and try to find causes. Causes as in if I say I'm trying to potentially, for example, show that a vegan protein shake, for example, is better than a non-vegan one. It turns out it's very, very hard to decouple and to deconfound all of the common causes and to actually prove this. There are actually recent studies that are showing that reproducibility is a complete disaster in science, that various factors in terms of one's political stance, the scientist's political stance, the number of parameters they had to work with, the number of analytical modes, financial interest even the choice of statistical significance, there's thresholds, can completely make or break a claim. And because of this, science is in many ways very fragile, and one could actually pick and choose whichever scientific literature they use. Ironically, I find when it comes to researchers, they know this more than anything, so they don't actually pride themselves in just referring to scientific literature. If anything, I've noticed more it's kind of in the bro science world that people have actually started using scientific literature, where they'll just conclude something from that last paragraph that they read in the conclusion and not even look at the robustness and how people got there. It turns out that the second source of information, funny enough, personal trainers love this the most, and that's anecdotal evidence. So anecdotal evidence is less of an estimation of a massive mean of people and more of a smaller subsample. So personal trainers will deal with, let's say, 10 to 20 clients, and they'll see that certain things worked. And they'll start using that as a very important source of information. And they may not be able to substantiate that with science. For example, they'll see that doing 8 to 12 reps is better than doing 4 to 8 reps of something. And they have no science to back it up, yet they're completely sure about it. And it's really the source of information for a lot of personal trainers. And then finally, and this is a really, really interesting and mysterious one, and it's intuition. There's just sometimes a gut feeling within yourself. And intuition should kind of give you an mnemonic kind of relation with the idea of individual. Every individual has a different experience with truth and nutrition and different facets of experience. And don't forget, as I said, science is an estimation of the means. At the end of the day, what matters to you most is not what a conclusion has to do with a group of people's averages. You care if the conclusion has to do with you. You just might be an outlier. And intuition in this case goes a long way. It's your experience of truth, and it comes from introspection and fine-tuning that you do for yourself. And it's a bit subtle in its difference than from anecdotal evidence. Anecdotal evidence is from, if seeing another person touch the fire and know that the fire is hot, and seeing from experience, it could also apply to your own, but intuition comes from real introspection. Inshallah, today I'm going to give you examples of how each of these three kick in when I developed my fitness routines, and how I use each of them carefully, and how you should also do the same. The way that I'll want to analogize how I do it is actually kind of a reference to the way that we see things in the artificial intelligence world. Think of finding the perfect routine or the perfect anything for yourself as a search problem, right? Ultimately, you're trying to search to find a needle in the haystack of possible candidates of perfect routines for yourself, right? Funny that we learn a lot about the robots we're trying to teach, and we learn more lessons from them than the lessons we're teaching it. But in a way, in search problems, what you do is, for example, take the analogy that I want to teach a robot, a baseball hitting robot, how to bat a baseball. The way that we'll do it is we'll actually initialize all of its joints and functions based on things that we've read in the literature. Or like in this case, let's say we know that it should be a certain angle, right? Let's say the robot should actually start like this. If we started completely from scratch, that's a lot of searching we have to do. That's the kind of effective scientific literature for you. It gives you a really good starting point. So as I said, treat it with a grain of salt, but start with all the claims that are being made, right? Because usually we find ourselves grouping towards the means. So for the most part, you'll find a lot of the scientific conclusions will resonate with the way you experience the world. So it's a good starting point. But the key thing that makes or breaks a really successful routine is the incorporation of fine-tuning and adjusting. And this is where personal trainers really come in. Because if it was just a matter of scientific literature, we'll just watch a YouTube video and you get all the information you want. But the active updating, and this is what we do in artificial intelligence as well. So it's like the updating is in the robot's initial kind of configuration. Well, it'll miss the baseball, right, at one point. Then you have to start updating intelligently to see, well, how did I miss it and how can I adjust? And that's where anecdotal evidence comes in. So based on the initial kind of initializations you had, you have to see, why did I miss? For example, I was supposed to have this amount of protein, but I don't feel like I'm making as much muscle. So how can I adjust it? That's where anecdotal evidence comes in. The mystery and the beauty of intuition then is that final goal. And by the way, an interesting fact, this is what's missing in AI. This is really what we argue is the difference between currently artificial intelligence systems and humans, the idea of intuition or common sense. And these are the finishing touches. This is actually what makes the difference between a good personal trainer and an excellent one. One that can get you from scaling and weighing your food and constantly weighing and constantly being kind of doing this almost stressful process where you have this feedback loop with reaching complete harmony and intuition for yourself. That's where you see the words intuitive eating or intuitive lifting. You don't have to count anymore. And this actually applies to every kind of facet in your life. When you can reach a point where you don't actually have to read off of anything, when you can give a lecture where you're passionate about a topic, when you don't have to memorize anymore, that's where intuition kicks in. And that's the ultimate goal. The moment your routine no longer is something you have to read off of, it's common nature, it's second nature. That's the goal here. And you see that these are all a matter of starting off with something that's less nuanced and then adjusting until you can reach intuition. And that's what you can use in order to build the perfect kind of fitness, health routine. And as we'll see, and I'll give you glimpses of it, it's the same principles that apply in building a really good spiritual and academic and career routine as well. So that leads to the kind of the bulk of what I want to talk about, and we'll start with my philosophy and methodology of how I actually developed my own routine and how I did it for my trainees. And so I'm going to start with really the essence of what my philosophy is all about, and it's based on something I think we've all rhetorically been introduced to, but perhaps many of us don't actually know why. And it's about the most powerful shape in the world. Can anybody... Right now, I'm gonna open it up a bit. I know that I had a very kind of long monologue, but I want to still make this interactive. Can anybody refer to me to what they think is the most powerful shape in the world? Circle's a good one. We'll talk about why that isn't, but it's not circle. Can anybody give me another guess, or you can give another guess? That's it. Yes, triangle. Star could be nice. It at least looks beautiful. But yes, triangle. The triangle is the most powerful shape in the world. And it's even beyond mathematics to me. I can give you a rigorous mathematical proof of why it's the most powerful shape in the world. But it's almost poetic why it's even the most powerful shape in the world. I'm going to try to give it through that account. First way that I'll say it is that, and that's why I like the answer of circle, is that there's different forces, right, that structures experience. So when we say powerful, we're trying to say that it's with respect to some force, it's able to resist the force, right? So there's forces that are coming at kind of different angles. I think I might have one of my close engineering friends here, so he's going to be very familiar with this. But forces have different names based on which directions they're exerted at which extents they're exerted at, and at which points even they're exerted at. Right? If you have a simple kind of, let's say a pencil is very weak because you can see that one of the problems with a very powerful force that they call bending is if you exert it at any length of the pencil, the bending causes the pencil to break. Now, what did engineers do? They realized, almost ironically, that the way you deal with a force, then you create a joint, which completely just gives into the force. It says, you know what? Bring it on. I'll bend with you, right? So they've designed joints in order to do just that. But now the question with joints is you have to connect and create shapes based off of joints. And now you have options. There's almost infinite configurations you have. You can create a rectangle, for example. And you find that despite the fact that it might be able to resist some of these issues that the pencil had with the exertions on the joints, because you'll see that the distribution varies, it actually is not rigid. It'll actually break quite easily if you exert in the right places on a rectangle, okay? Even a circle, if you exert a force, the distribution of that force is not equal throughout. But it turns out that the triangle, when you exert this kind of bending force at any of its kind of, any of its locations, the rest of its kind of symmetrical neighbors take on that load evenly. And because of that, it becomes a really, really stable shape. And it could actually, and every joint and every position in this triangle works together at resisting a force. Turns out that while it creates the most powerful shape in the world, that actually is its very weakness, meaning that you really have to make sure you're maintaining each of these triangles, each of the joints of these triangles. And we're going to get into that after. But just keep and entertain in this notion that the triangle could be extremely powerful. Now, almost as a sort of pun, but it is related, is to my methodology, is the idea of triangulation, okay? Now, don't think of triangles in this case, but what I mean by triangulation, what everybody means when they use it, is essentially using two or more dimensions in order to confirm a truth. Have you ever, so I asked one kind of question. This is an interesting riddle that only recently I figured the answer to, and I was surprised, subhanAllah. Do you guys know why two eyes are better than one? Why do we have two eyes and not one eye? Why did we evolve two eyes? Can anybody give me a guess on this? So it turns out that the reason we have two eyes is because each eye is from a slightly different kind of location. And because of it, it has a different dimension in what it sees, right? What the left eye sees is actually a slightly different image than what the right eye sees. And because of that, you can triangulate and you can get a better sense of the object you're seeing. Specifically, you can tell the object's depth. Because the further the object is, the more different the images you're seeing. And because of that, you have a better grasp of truth. And it's the difference and the independence of these two dimensions that actually give you a better grasp of truth, right? Same idea with a more subtle phenomenon. There's this phenomenon in neuroscience called synesthesia, where it's actually a mutation. The neural pathways that relate different senses are completely broken. And what it causes is, for example, someone that hears music will start seeing colors. Or someone that, for example, hears a number might smell something. And because of that, they're actually extremely powerful mathematicians because of this, potentially. They can do really amazing arithmetic because they're able to triangulate. So triangulation is extremely profound. And it's truly one of the mysteries of this world and the perception of this world is that the more dimensions you have in order to access truths, the better your grasp of that truth is. So this builds a foundation, these two ideas I gave you of triangulation and the idea of a powerful structure being triangle as the basis for my philosophy of the way that I see the world. And a lot of people made the same conclusion. And that's the idea of a mind, body, spirit triangle. And this idea is basically coming from the notion that the way that we grasp the world, the way that we experience the world is through three dimensions. There's one of it that's the cognitive. It's in terms of how we perceive and how we make sense and how we reason about the phenomenon that we experience in the world, right? We will conclude things that aren't actually immediately empirical. We can conclude gravity exists. We can conclude things of common sense through the mind. Then spirits are even the more unseen things like love, things like the belief in Judgment Day and in God, right? Romantic kind of nuances and notions we can grasp through spirits. And body is an obvious one too, right? So we experience pain and we perceive dimensions of the world physically through the body, right? So these are basically the nodes. These are the vertices that we call it in the mind, body, spirit triangle. Now the edges aren't just for fun either. The edges are extremely important because they're suggesting, at least in this kind of structure, symbolically, that there's an intimate relationship between each of these vertices. So there's a relationship between the mind and the spirit and the body and the mind. And because of that, it forms this triangle, which is the structure that I considered before. Similarly to my analogy then, just like how a triangle is supposed to be a powerful shape, it's subject to forces. What are the forces then? So in this way, I've kind of suggested to you that your entire kind of being, your existence, can be modeled using these three dimensions, and these three dimensions in which you perceive, experience, and the world. But you are subject to many, many forces, some of which attack certain dimensions more than others, right? So external forces are challenges that kind of fog up or they block the perception and the ability for you to use each of these nodes. For example, on the body, right? Simple ones that we could come up with are injuries, for example, simple injuries. So you have a leg injury, right? Or You have leg injury, say you have cardiovascular issues, God forbid, say you have cancer. Mind are similar problems as well. You'll have brain fog, you'll be extremely exhausted one day. And then spirit as well, temptations, you have confidence issues, you have lack of hope, lack of belief, lack of yaqeen. Each of these dimensions can be subject to forces. And essentially, the more they're exerted by forces, the more of the possibility of them completely breaking down. But what does that suggest? As I said, one of the weaknesses of the triangle is that if any of these dimensions breaks down, then the rest of the dimensions, the rest of the nodes suffer as well. If you find that there's a weakness in the spirit, and I'm going to emphatically show you examples of this, inshallah, throughout the remainder of the talk, is that I'm not going to speak just off rhetoric. But if you have something wrong with your spirit, you will immediately feel the forces manifest themselves in terms of the mind. You'll get brain fog. If you have issues with spirit, your body will suffer, and vice versa. If you have injuries, if you're not honing your physical fitness well, your spirit will suffer, and so your mind. So the question becomes, how do we actually optimize our triangles? How do we make sure that these breaks don't exist, right? And so, and in the same way that you do structurally, as any engineer would know, it's through routine maintenance, right? You have to routinely be honing and fixing these. Because in life, and you'll see that the most meaningless life is if there's no external pressure, if there's no external force. The external forces will routinely be there. So the best way you can counteract that is in the same way as like an F1 race. After every lap, there has to be a pit stop. You have to routinely maintain. And so that's the idea. And remember, the ultimate purpose of this, and inshallah, I can quickly at the very end give you an example of a snippet of the beauty of actually having honed all of these edges, all of these nodes, is you can actually acquire really, really amazing truths that you wouldn't have been able to see if you were only a master at only one node, right? We know many people in life that are, let's say, geniuses, but at the lack of spirits, right? We can have Stephen Hawking, who can conclude black holes exist, but will wrestle with the idea that God exists. We can have a bodybuilder that's an excellent bodybuilder, but has no say when it comes to topics of academia or intellectuality, right? And that's why, for example, Imam Ali alayhi salam, I think that's what really, really distinguished him, right? I mean, in terms of being his military prowess, we can find examples of amazing military generals, Genghis Khan, Khalid ibn al-Walid, supposedly. We can find romantics like Hafiz, Rumi, who then maybe lacked the prowess in the military domain. But how often can you find someone that could hone in and master all three of the edges, all three of the nodes? You start being able to access profound truths about the world, right? In the same way that you can only know an object's depth through two eyes, there are truths that Allah has hidden from us that you'll only be able to know the depth of if you've mastered all three of these nodes. And I really, really believe that. And sometimes we've underestimated one or the other. For example, today, maybe it seems that a lot of us will estimate body really profoundly. We'll think that that's the important part. My argument today will be that perhaps it was the missing component that you needed in order to actually attain the truths that will propel you forward for the rest of your life. So now I'm going to actually go into the role of Ramadan and how can Ramadan help you overcome these domain obstacles. So the one claim that I'm making is that Ramadan is almost the forced opportunity for you to renew a routine, to come up with a single routine. And remember, the thing that I said about routine was that routine is that thing that will maintain those edges. It's that pit stop that you need, that if there was something wrong, that's your opportunity to fix it. And you'll be able to immediately spot those failures when you have a routine. And I believe that Ramadan is the opportunity to really investigate that. How specifically? There's three arguments that I'll make. Number one is this whole fixed eating time, right? Throughout the day when you don't have Ramadan, there's no obligation for you to eat at a certain time. I mean, at least you never had that if you never had a daily routine, right? But Ramadan almost unconsciously is forcing you to actually develop that routine, right? And that's the beauty sometimes we'll see people say, why is jurisprudence, why are Allah's laws so arbitrary? Why do I have to pay exactly 5 prayers? Why do I have to do this many rakat? Why do I have to, break my fast at like 6:47 and not 6:48? Well, it's because it's fixing for you a routine. And you're going to see the very benefits of those arbitrary settings that you put for a routine and how that actually has an effect. So that's the first part. It actually it begins to build you a skeleton. What's the hardest part of writing a paper? As you guys know that you've been in school, the hardest part is the outline. To actually build the very beginning of knowing how I'm going to write this paper. Funny enough, when you built the skeleton, normally 70-80% of your stress is already finished. It's mitigated. Even though content-wise, you've done maybe a fractional amount of content, it's the real skeleton of building something that's the real task. And Ramadan does that for you. It's already giving you a skeleton. It said, these are the times you eat. You can't eat outside of this. And these are the times you're praying. So it's built for you already the skeleton of a schedule. It's done half of your job for you. And then on top of that, what does it do? There's less noise. So outside of the eating, there's no opportunity for you to eat. What else can you do when you're not eating? Or you're not engaging in other carnal activities? Well, it's already reduced a lot of those external forces, right? Those temptations, certain kind of attacks on your system. That's why esoterically, when we say shaitan is locked up, those external forces are mitigated. There's a silencing of all of those noises. So really in the pit stop, it's an isolated location where other cars aren't in your danger. It's completely isolated and you can truly fix yourself there. It's really the opportunity to be at a pit stop. And finally, it's this idea of triangulation. Because this often kind of abandoned node, a lot of people, we don't realize that third element, that spirit, that's when you can really hone in and fix that. And Ramadan gives you a unique opportunity to fix this. And oftentimes fixing this might actually translate to really what I mean gains, really what I mean fitness gains. And I'll give you specific examples of how prayer, for example, led to making changes in my workout routine, of how I even work out and how I lift weights in order to get even more muscle, for example. So let me give you an example of my 2020 Ramadan routine and how this kind of contributed to the changes that were made in my life and how you can kind of make your own based off of this. In short, you see that most of the skeleton is there. From an hour before Fajr, so this is like 3:30 at that point, to 4:30, I would wake up for suhoor. What I love doing is I like to have an Islamic lecture like Dr. Panahian on the background, and then I would prepare for prayer. One thing I would do with my suhoor, and this is one of those fine-tuning things, is I liked to eat it extremely slowly. So I would take the half an hour to eat suhoor. Instead of doing a buzzer beater suhoor and waking up 10 minutes before, it would be enjoying it, like it would be something that I would truly enjoy. I'd take 10 to 15 minutes while the lecture was on to make my suhoor, and then I'd unwind with 10 to 15 to potentially 30 minutes of eating it while I'm listening to a lecture. That I found had a lot of effects on my enjoyment of the food, on the digestion of the food. And so that's something I find too. I kind of almost want to color code. Remember, I color coded the sources of information, but this one wasn't scientific literature that taught me that. It was anecdotal. It was almost intuitive. And then what I would do is I'd immediately go to sleep right after I prayed at 4:30 to 7. So 2 hours and a half of sleep approximately. And then I'd force myself awake. And I remember, and I'm telling you this, right before that time I said I was a person who would wake up at 11 and wouldn't want to wake up. I forced myself awake. For those first week or so, it was extremely difficult, but I would force myself. And so in that set, but what I would do though, in order to kind of make it not so much of an unenjoyable kind of process, the 7 to 8, the time between 7 to 8 was my time, it was me time. Absolutely no work. And what I would often do is something that I would enjoy. I'd actually play an episode of Jeopardy. I like to watch that. It became a routine at the end. And I would clean the house. I found actually by cleaning the house, it actually sort of, a lot of brain fog that I had, a lot of stress that I had, I already felt I've accomplished something. And I gained a lot of stress mitigation just through this me time. And to this day, the thing that I look forward to, and this is what I can't sleep, being excited about, is 7 to 8 a.m. 7 to 8 a.m. is my time. Absolutely nothing will stop that. It's like the phone is off and it's just me. And so I'll wake up, and even though I was tired in the very beginning for Ramadan, it really helped. Someone had said, do you drink coffee? Did I drink coffee? No, I didn't. I didn't drink coffee at this time. We'll talk about that. And then from 8 to 12, I would work. Keep in mind, I already felt like I've accomplished a lot. I've already cleaned the house. I've already that itself had such a powerful impact on me. Just 15 minutes. Imagine every 15 minutes in the morning, you're cleaning the house. I already felt I did something, right? I'd go in with that sense of accomplishment, and it was almost momentum for my work. 8 to 12, and by the way, there's no intakes of food, so you're completely focused. 8 to 12, I would work. And then 12 to 1, I'd nap. And this was really important. Sometimes it'd be a half an hour nap. And if it was half an hour, I'd wake up for another half an hour. I was just relax. But that kind of qaylula, or we say chort in Farsi, that's actually really important, especially in Ramadan. You'll find that you need to sustain your energy. So 12 to 1, I actually go for a nap. And then I would wake up, and at 1, and this is what I realized, it's almost like I knew, look, if I keep my prayers at the end and I do it the last minute, it'll break my routine. I might as well finish it in the very beginning. So in the beginning, it started still as an ends. It was still as a kind of task, but it sort of started becoming, we use this word, a totem. It almost was a symbol of, I've gone this far. It was like a save game, if you want to say like a video game reference. I saved my game at this point by praying. So I'd wake up, by the time I was kind of relaxed, I would pray, and then go back to work from 1 to 4. 1 to 4 o'clock, or 1 to 5 o'clock. And then 5 o'clock to 6, I remember I would occasionally nap. I write this here as in, it depends on how much of a load I had in terms of work. If it was extremely stressful, I'd go and have another hour. And notice in this case, it added up to the 8 hours that I needed. I had the 6 hours approximately, plus 1 hour, plus 1 hour. No, I guess it was a bit less. It was around 6 hours, 7 hours. For you, you'll see it'll depend. I find that for myself, I didn't need more than 6 hours of sleep overall, especially with these naps. By the way, they say Newton and a lot of the greats, they did something called the 9 to 3. They would sleep only for 6 hours, and then they would have a 15-minute nap as well. And then when I would wake up at 6 to 7, I found I was extremely relaxed. I've already accomplished everything in my day. And by the way, the year before, the way that we PhD students love doing things is just do things at night, right? That's when you're stressed and you're trying to do everything. At this point, at 5 o'clock, I've done absolutely everything. The room is completely clean. I've slept enough. I'm completely energized. And by the way, at this point, it's almost like I don't even feel hungry. And with that relaxed state, I feel extremely spiritual. And then I'll approach the Quran and read it with that kind of calmness. And read anything. Read the Quran, listen to the Quran, listen to a lecture. And it's a really nice time too, because the sun is setting and you know food is coming soon. So you're really in a relaxed state. And this is where I would really hone in on my spirits. And then I would also, again, the preparation of these things, I enjoy the preparation of food. And this is something this was almost anecdotal as well. To prepare something, it's a routine that you're going to start enjoying, to prepare food. And so I would take like half an hour properly to prepare my food and to clean again. So I would just clean from, let's say, the morning of, and throughout the days if I had like folders open. And so that for that 1 hour was also cleaning and preparing for iftar. And then the game began. And then it was the fun part. So 8 o'clock, I would have iftar, and around half an hour after, I'd go to the gym. And we're going to have a deep dive for around 10 minutes into what that looked like and the kind of nutrition plan for yourself. And this is where in the locker room, guys don't believe me, the amount of energy I had at the gym here, because of the kind of skeleton that I built, the kind of the psyche that I developed throughout the day, that I just destroyed my day, in the positive way. I did everything I need in terms of spiritually. I did everything in terms of my career. And now I'm just going to, for these 2 hours, I'm going to kill it at the gym. And you have a lot of energy. There's a lot of contributions in that energy in terms of the nutrition. So that's really, really important as well. But psychologically, there's nothing blocking you, right? The mind-body triangle thing kicks in here. In terms of my mind, I'm appeased. In terms of my spirit, I am as well. And the last part is if I have good nutrition, this 2 hours really became one of the most enjoyable, and that's why I'm so excited to start lifting in Ramadan. I really mean this, that it really is something that I'm looking forward to. So for 2 hours, I would do this. And then I emphasize this, don't stay awake. After I return from my workout, I would have my meals. So I'd have 2 meals after, 1 hour apart. I'll give you a sense of my meals, and then you have to go to sleep. It's really, really important that you don't stay up. For your circadian rhythm, it's really important that you sleep at night. A muscle gain, whether you sleep 8 hours straight or take 1 to 3 hours naps. I'm going to get into that. As I said, with the circadian rhythm, it's really important that you have, mostly it's your REM sleep in throughout the night. Again, this is scientific literature, and there's some literature that goes against this, but in general, if you have 4 or 5 hours at night, if you sleep at night, it's almost equivalent of having like 8 hours if you're doing it throughout the day. By the way, every routine needs its goals, right? And I had the most humble goals. I wasn't trying to do it. Remember, I was survival mode. I remember the beginning of Ramadan. So it would have been this time last year, literally this time last year. I just had a quick prayer to God where I said, all I want to do is I just don't want to make these prayers so stressful. Honestly, I was saying, Allah, I would finish my prayer. I'd want to get up and leave. And I remember in passing, I just quickly said, God, like you see, it's embarrassing. I'm like running off from your prayer. Just make it so that somehow I'll have a better relationship with your prayers, right? And that's all I set as a goal. And the other one, it was a simple goal, publish a paper. And to this day, like this became second nature to me. But this is how much of a survival mode that I was. I was like, I want to publish a single paper. And then physically, my goal was, at that point, I'd lost some fat and I wanted to maintain it, but gain muscle. And then I also wanted to have a good relationship with sleep. And you see how that kicked in here. Like I really put a big deal on the sleep. And now let's go into, I think these are where a lot of your questions, guys, are. And I'm going to really attack these, inshallah. I haven't left you guys hanging, hopefully, because what I want to do now is I want to give you a sense of really where the nutrition and the workout kicks in and actually having really, really important physical honing in terms of gaining muscle and really achieving that and seeing that Ramadan can do that for you. So what did my diet look like? And we're really going to break it down. And in the question answer, we can really go back to this slide, okay? I'm like rolling up my sleeves for this because this is really what I use for my trainees. And it was like a really, really big deal for me to get this right. So the first part of the diet is, and I actually say this at the end, but I should remind you this here. Every person has a daily expenditure of energy, right? So they will burn a certain amount of calories based off of various factors. Some of it is inherent. Every person actually has these fine motor movements. Some people tend to be a bit faster. Like, for example, with me, you're seeing like right now while I'm giving this talk, I'm burning way more calories than, let's say, the average person sitting on a couch, right? Some people, their natural state, they're really jittery. Some people, they're really just, they think frequently, and some people are just a little bit more chill or zen, right? And because of that, they're burning more or less amount of calories per day. That's just fine, a motor calorie burning. Then there's the actual activities you do. And then there's your age and metabolism, right? You can only have an estimate of that total daily expenditure. And that's something you have to play around with. But we can make estimates, and you can use a calculator online. If you can put in, for example, the type of activities you do throughout your day, your age, your height, and your current weight, it'll estimate in general what kind of expenditure you have. So for example, if you're someone that's 180 centimeters height and you're 23 years old, and you're living a sort of active lifestyle, it might say your expenditure is 2,200 calories out, right? The idea about weight loss and muscle gain, there's no mystery. And if any personal trainer tries to make it an art, it's because they're just trying to get you in so that you can pay them something. It's that if you want to lose weight, your output has to be more than your input, right? So if you're, burning 2,200 calories and you're gaining and you're inputting, you're eating in the total of 2,100, and it's really easy to calculate how much you're gaining, how much you're inputting, you're going to be losing. And the way you lose is you lose off of different areas, right? You might lose a little bit of muscle first and fat, but you'll be losing weight ultimately. And there's ways of optimizing so that you lose more muscle or lose more fat than muscle, and that's in your nutrition. But that's where the nutrition will kick in. But there's no magic to that. So it's output minus input, right? And so based on that, you can adjust your cardio activities in order to lose weight, right? Or if you want to maintain, you kind of make these equal. Now the diet kicks in terms of exactly the components that keep your muscle from being lost during these weight gains or these processes is the relationship between these macromolecules of protein and carbohydrates and fats that are pretty much known to a science. So let me give you an example of the diet here. So what I would do in Ramadan is I would have 4 meals on training days. I have 4 training days per week, okay? And so my meal 1, this is my breakfast, and I take this literally, is the current breakfast I have off of Ramadan. And so this is actually a lot of protein and a lot of carbs. This is when you need to absorb that quickly. And especially it's because I severely insist this, when you work out would be right after iftar, not before. That's when you could have a productive lift and actually do just as much at the gym that you were doing without Ramadan. So that's when you actually need a lot of protein. So these are fast-acting molecules, both protein and carbs, right? And so, for example, and then the type of food you can have for this, it can vary, right? That's also anecdotal. For some people, they react really well, for example, to oatmeal. For some people, they don't, right? And you can look at the nutritional information in any kind of food and make it add up approximately to the macros that you want. So in this case, I know that 70 grams, 90 grams, and 5 grams, you always want to have a little bit of fat in order to actually distribute the digestion of that food. If there's no fat, it immediately absorbs to your system. and you'll feel immediately hungry and you won't actually benefit from a 2-hour workout, for example. So I always put a little bit of fats in what I do. So it's like 5 grams fats. And then and I'll tell you what the sums will look like. We'll talk about that, inshallah. Meal 2 is right after I finish the workout. Right after I finish the workout is where I'll take a post-workout shake. And this is really important to have another source of fast-acting carbohydrates. There's 2 types of carbohydrates. There's slow-acting and fast-acting. In general, this is a little bit of a nuance as well. It's also a bit anecdotal, but it turns out that things that are maltodextrin-based, like carbohydrates powders, will absorb quicker in your body, and that's when your body's begging for something because it's just exhausted itself. And when it's doing the begging, by the way, it's begging through building muscle. So things that you can ingest right after a workout tend to, at least we've seen in some literature, actually go straight to your muscle. That's why you actually see some bodybuilders, they'll have like Fruit Loops right after they work out. These are really high sugary intakes of things that otherwise throughout the day aren't actually productive. Even having candy, I've seen some bodybuilders, they take candy after they work out. So I'll actually make this kind of like an ice cream kind of smoothie. By the way, while I'm having these, like I'm making it enjoyable. It's like an ice cream kind of, like you could have a shake and down it, or you could actually put ingredients like I put, like xanthan gum, which is like a thickener. So it can make like an ice cream tendency out of something. And then the meal 3, I'll have 1 hour after. I have after meal 2, and this will be like my dinner or like the meals that I have throughout the day. And this is like a really nice lean source of protein, like tilapia, like you can have chicken breast, like for example, I've recently found halal bison or really lean red meats. And then you can have that with rice, which is a really good source of carbs as well. That's slow acting. So that'll kind of distribute throughout the day. And that's kind of the macros that you see for that. And then for meal 4, that's my favorite meal. And that's actually, and that's another thing. You should really make your favorite meals be the meals that you're waking up to. That's another reason why you get excited in the morning. You can see I have this giant meal in the morning. It's not just for the excitement of it, but it's because I know I'm not going to eat for like the 12 hours. You need to now have a lot of fats. Fats digest slowly. And so I won't feel hungry at all because of this fat intake. And it's because it's also really healthy fats, right? So these are like fats from nuts and such sources are extremely healthy. And because of that, they're distributing so slowly, you're not even hungry throughout the day. So in this case, I'll have like this Greek yogurt protein blend, and I'll have a peanut butter bagel. And you can see the macros over here. You can even screenshot this, guys, for yourselves. But in this case, for me, these kind of 4 meals really contributed to all the nutrients I needed in order to gain muscle, but absolutely not feel hungry or exhausted throughout the day. I'm going to get into the kind of how to calculate macros for yourselves as well. The last thing is water at any opportunity. So throughout these meals, I actually currently have like soft, fizzy, 0-calorie drinks. Throughout Ramadan, there's no joke. It's almost a competition how much water I can intake. So I have like almost infinite water. There's like throughout each of these meals, I'm constantly downing water. And you'll feel there's an intuitive sense that you won't like over drink. You'll feel like you're full, but really I take water seriously. Even throughout the gym while I'm working out, I'm drinking water. Now here's the macro part of it. And this is where you guys can kick in and adjust this diet for yourselves. In general, they say you should have around 1 gram of protein for the amount of pounds that you are of a person, okay? So I personally found for myself, I exert myself a lot in the gym and I've gained a lot of muscle for 10 years of lifting. So I need a little bit more, right? So I'm like around 180 pounds. I take 250 grams of protein. If you're starting out, it's been 4 or 5 years, you can make this so it's around, if you're on 80 pounds like me, you could do 180 grams of protein. You've already got a big part of it down, right? You've already gotten that part down. Now you have a few more left. By the way, you want to make it all add up. And the way you do this is each of these macromolecules, protein times 4 is calories, carbs times 4 is calories, right? So carbs times 4 is the calories, times 4, and fats is times 9. Fats is like a heavier one. So each gram of fat is, for example, 1 gram of fat would be 9 calories, 9 joules of calories, right? That's how I calculate it. So you want to be wary of this too. If your goal is to gain weight or lose weight, this is something there as well. But if you're wanting to maintain, then the first kind of bit here was just what I said about 1 gram per pound. And then another one that we can kind of get heuristically is here. In general, they say that 20% of your calories, only 20% should come from fats, okay? Around 20%. For women, the literature shows it could be a little bit higher, 30 to 40% of fats. And then the remainder is really easy, right? Because the remainder you calculate with carbs. Whatever's left is with carbs. And that right there, I'm telling you guys, is literally what any personal trainer is doing. I know personal trainers that are charging clients thousands of dollars to literally do the simple calculation you guys can do at the back of a notepad. So this is it. This is all of the science there, and this is all that they're trying to tell you in order to say that they're experts and you're not. And they're not doing anything more than you could be doing with this. In fact, if anything, the anecdotal evidence and the kind of intuitive that eating that you'll accomplish will do way more for yourself than the program they can give you. And we're going to go through questions and answers soon. Now, the workout, I've seen some questions about that. I'm going to go through this. I've sworn by this. You do not need more than 4 days a week. The 3 days that you have of resting are extremely important for gaining muscle, right? Because the muscles that are torn need to develop, and the developing is what creates size every time. So that resting is the opportunity to do that. So I always had a 4-day split on or off of Ramadan. And the way I group my muscles are here. It doesn't have to be the case for everybody. And what I like to do, since leg days tend to be very difficult, is I'll sandwich in a rest day between these 2 days. And then I'll have another 2 days. For example, for myself, you've seen chest repeats itself twice. I found that my chest, for example, lags. So I incorporate chest here. You see here how, these are adjustments I'm making for myself, and you could do it with yourself if you're self-aware, if you're self-querying. You have to look at yourself and be aware and see, okay, well, this is the adjustments I can make. And then I'll have 2 rest days in the weekend, which is a perfect time to have a rest day, right? So these are opportunities you can spend time with friends, right? Or if you really, really want to have a spiritual night. For example, one of my dear friends that I had Ramadan with, he's Sunni, and so we do Taraweeh together. So this is a great opportunity here to have those really, really spiritual nights, right? Especially also for like Laylatul Qadr, these are opportunities for the rest days to kick in, and you can even time it around. Sometimes you could have 3 days of workout days, so you could really have good nights as well. All of this to say that this is no excuse. You can have 9-hour work days, 8 hours sleep, 2-hour workouts, and still completely gain muscle if you schedule your routine right. The other thing was that the workout is, remember that I'm starting 30 minutes to an hour after iftar. This depends from person to person. Some people find they need the hour. Some people find that 30 minutes is enough. You have to kind of play around with this. Personally, I actually find eating 30 minutes before is fine. I have a lot of energy. I don't feel bloated. 5 exercises or so for each body part is what I found is really, really good. 8 to 12 reps. I'm going to give you, I think, a glimpse, inshallah, for 5 minutes of how you do the reps and how they actually help. And I've found never, whether within Ramadan or outside of it, do you need to do heavy weights. You do not need to feel the stress that I might just die lifting this weight in order to gain muscle. Nobody ever wanted that. And you'll get injured, and in the long term, you're going to lose out. You do not need to be doing heavy weights ever. You just need to do the amount of weights so that after 8 to 12 reps, you'll feel exhausted. And if I hand a bodybuilder any amount of weights, small amount of weights, and ask them to do 16 reps, you'll see they'll struggle. They won't be able to do it. All these videos you're watching, the guys are doing like 2 reps of very heavy weights, and that's not productive. Either the guy's on steroids, which makes you feel like there's a correlation between doing 2 reps and how they look like, and they would have looked like that anyways with high reps or otherwise. But I mean this so you don't do heavy weights, especially through Ramadan. I always finish with core workouts. This is extremely important. And I couldn't emphasize this more. And I justified this part using intuition. And I'll show you how this had an effect on my spiritual health. And I argue that the staple towards my success in life and everything that I pointed out in my beginning in the lecture was the 20 minutes of the cardio that I do at the very end. Do you know what I analogize the cardio? Remember what I said about the 3 nodes and how you can kind of grasp truths? Life works in analogies. And actually, I put a quote from the Holy Quran about that there's signs that sometimes we're blind towards and we're not grasping is because we haven't honed all of our nodes. I started to even understand what Laylatul Qadr meant through cardio. You'd say, why? What's the relationship? It's almost like the 2-hour workout that I was doing was preparing me for the hardest part, and that was the 20-minute cardio. Turns out there's so much scientific literature about the importance of the correlation of building muscle because of a 20-minute sprint right at the very end. But it also had effect in terms of truly silencing my demons, right? Because that's at the point where when you're sprinting for 20 minutes, the voices in your head are so loud. You tell yourself, I've already lifted for 1 hour and 50 minutes. I don't need another 20 minutes of sprinting. Every day now, it's been around a year and almost 2 years now, I've been doing this 20 minutes cardio. I still confront those demons. There hasn't been a single day that I'm doing 20 minutes of cardio where at 10-minute mark, my mind isn't telling me, something in my mind's not telling me, Ali, this is too much, you got to stop. Right? And I found that, by the way, for yourselves, the nuances might be different. For yourselves, you might find it's 18 minutes at 155 heartbeats per minute. You'll find it. And when you find it, you'll know. That's what they call the flow state, by the way. In psychology, the flow state is you could find doing an activity just the right balance of challenging and enjoyable. And I found it with my cardio. That every time at that 14-minute mark, I'm screaming at myself to stop. And then the best part is when I silence it at that 14-minute mark and I go on for the next 6 minutes, the endorphin rush I get at the very end, that I finished it, is my workout didn't make sense without it, right? When you think about what you're doing within the hour 50 of lifting, it's not hard, right? They say no pain, no gain. That 20 minutes is the staple. And it's almost like my muscle is 90% torn. When I do that 20 minutes sprint, everything is torn. And I really, really felt anabolic from that. And this is really why guys, when I go into locker rooms, there are question marks all around. I haven't gotten a single guy in steroids who thinks I'm not also doing steroids. I'm telling you the difference is because I don't know anybody that's doing 20-minute sprints every single day without any excuse. I've had foot injuries where then I had to compromise and do like stair climbs or anything, but I have never compromised on this. In the same way as I'll try to say at the very end, I haven't compromised on prayers for the year and a half. It's almost like another reminder for me. And this is where triangulating will kick in, inshallah. I'll get into that. But so the rest, I rest around 30 to 50 seconds between sets, plenty of water in the workouts. And on rest days, and this is another thing of intuition, I found stretching really, really helps. Key tips I found was that controlled variation is good. Even Ramadan, even Allah knew this about Ramadan, right? In the way the days work. Even Ramadan is not fully routine. The day timings are slightly shifting. And this is a key thing about routine. You don't want to, routine should stay there, but you should also be slightly varying routine. That's a kind of fine balance, right? And so that's important too. So sometimes change the chronology of your lifts, of the order that you're doing workouts. Sleep is, honestly, I would say, you know how they say like 60-40 in terms of nutrition and workouts? I think it's actually like 80% sleep and 20% rest, the rest of that. If you can't sleep the amount that you need in order to feel energized, you're not going to gain muscle, period, point blank. So it's one of the most underestimated estimators of muscle growth. And stress will be there throughout everything in your day. And if you can mitigate stress while you even eat, I don't know how many people are eating while they're working. Do not eat and work at the same time. If you're stressed when you're about to do a lift, there's a lot of literature on the fact that you won't gain muscle just because your cortisol is blocking you from gaining muscle. So that's why you should lift low weights, enjoy your time at the gym. So do whatever it takes to mitigate stress. Now, this last bit, I really wanted to give a bit more time, but I won't be able to because I want to give some time for question answering. But I want to give you a sense of how I made those finishing touches for myself and how you can do it for yourself. And where the percolation and how I point to you that fitness routine I had an effect where I was able to actually start excelling in my career and in terms of my relationship with God. And I think only for time's sake, I'll be able to kind of emphasize this relationship here. Let's kind of like use a magnifying lens of what I said about my cardio. And I was just thinking about this yesterday when I finished my cardio. And it was like almost one of the truths that I start to grasp because of triangulation really hit me really hard. So I finished my cardio, proud as ever, right? Endorphins rushing. I was about to start my prayer. I found that a lot of these techniques that I'm using in my cardio, answering these demons, focusing, doing really, going all out into silencing everything, it's almost like I felt shameful that for 20 minutes, I could be a complete warrior in doing my workout excellently. But for 5 minutes, right? 4 or 5 minutes of doing an Isha prayer, all of a sudden I can just listen to any voice in my head. I can remember objects that I've missed throughout the house. And it's almost like our mind is firing, right? But the beauty of having done cardio for a year and a half was that you become an expert at silencing voices. So that as I'm praying, it's just become so second nature to completely focus on the 4 minutes. That was something that I never thought I could do. The 4 minutes of focusing on prayer is, we all know, it's almost the most impossible task in the world. No matter how hard you try, There'll be 30 seconds of it where your mind wanders. But I'm telling you that for the year and a half of, and you know the thing about mind wandering while you're working, while you're running, it's a disaster. Why is that? One of the things you're doing if you're a runner, you know, on a treadmill, worst thing you could do is look down and look at the time. It's the worst thing, because you'll think that 10 minutes went by, you'll look down and you'll be like 6 seconds went by. So you have to be a master at not letting your mind wander. And when you develop that mastery, it starts to actually have an effect on your prayer. And so my prayer, it's become very, very, very easy. And the same voice has the same pitch. It's literally the same sound. So that same voice that's telling me, Ali, stop during my cardio, it's the same voice that's saying, Ali, don't do prayer. It's the same voice that's whispering in my head for other temptations in my life. And it's the same voice that I'm beating every 20 minutes of my life. So it already feels, it's much easier. And so I'm telling you that this is where percolations actually exist. When you start conquering the weights within the gym, you'll see that the weights within that are forcing, the weights that are being exerted here start to be weaker, right? Because you have a stronger set here. You have a stronger joint here. And this is really what I mean about like triangulation. And I developed a lot of routines that come from this realization. For example, I found that hygiene, nutrition has a huge effect on my body. And that comes from like uncluttering my mind, right? And that's why I developed that kind of cleaning routine, right? Or sleep quality. And that has a mind-body kind of relationship. I found, for example, dialogues that I have, I say dialogue, right? It's like more like monologue I have with Allah in the morning during Fajr has really improved my speech quality for my research talks, for example. And so like these are relationships of spirit and mind. And I invite you to find those relationships yourself. And I insist that you really, it comes from knowing that each of these nodes needs to be addressed. That you'll find truths that are 3-dimensional, not even 2-dimensional. And I'll give you one last sweet taste of a 3-dimensional truth, because right now I'm giving you 2-dimensional truths, right? Between relationships between these kind of 2 nodes. Once you hone all 3, you start seeing truths in the universe that are 3-dimensional and that Allah really wants you to see. But as I said in that verse, it was saying that there's some people that are blind to that. And it's only from honing all of these 3. And so everything I said here was based on what I've already said, is that you kind of start with the scientific literature, what I said about those kind of numbers, those end of the sticky note numbers, and you adjust your routine based off of it. The timings between your lifts, how much you should lift. Some of these questions you're asking me, we'll get into them. But to be honest with you, I would say to you that some of these questions, you have to actually go and embark. Sometimes I find that deep down, it's an excuse to be asking those questions when you know you can answer those questions by going and immersing yourself in the gym. What's the worst that can happen? So you had a bad day at the gym. Well, then adjust based off of it. Dive in. And I think this is the real halt for why we don't progress in other aspects of our lives. Dr. Panahian was the same guy. I listened to a lecture. He says, why do you think there aren't more arifs in the world? He says, because we don't ask. We don't ask Allah to actually want to become that. So the first thing you have to do is just embark. Literally go to the gym and you'll see the answers to these questions will naturally befall on you, right? Yes, start with scientific literature. Go to an expert, right? And this is exactly the idea of taqleed, for example. Go to an expert and get those kind of initializations down, right? You don't want to be completely not leveraging off of, like they say, the shoulders of giants, right? We don't want to invent like gravity from scratch when we're trying to get a new theorem. But at the end of the day, there will be an amount that you have to discover for yourself. And that's really important. And this is what personal trainers love to lie to you about. They think it's them that'll do that for you. It's you that will have to do that for yourself. My parting advice, and that it's the kind of 3-dimensional truths that I'm recently kind of exposing myself to. And I feel like it's really been this last week or 2, I'm experiencing it. And it's really been, I can't even articulate the feelings that I'm getting in terms of truly like a smell, truly like a sound that I'm experiencing is, well, the first one is not really advice or truth, but it's one of the key things that I think I should mention to you guys, is that you should try to limit in number, but maximize in quality the connections you have with people. And I've really sought to do that. The close friends you see, for example, here that are listening, these are the friends that I've kept really, really close to myself as brothers, that when I die, I want to be thinking about them. And I've really limited the number of friends that I had to really close ones. And I really emphasize this on your mental health. Have at least one person in your life constantly checking you, especially in these times in the pandemic. It's extremely important to have that. Use Salat as a foundation for your routine. if there's a single skeleton I can propose, if you want to start tonight, your routine on Ramadan, put literally the way that I drew my routine, but start with salat. I cannot tell you the barakah that will have for your life if you can have that as the skeleton for your routine. And the final one, and I think this is the kind of the three-dimensional truth that hit me like it was like a train recently, was it's the most humiliating truth of all. It's as if Allah was waiting for us to hone all of these three kind of nodes in order to realize something really, really profound. And it hit me recently when I was praying Fajr. And it was that, that when I said that, like, I feel pride when I finish my workouts, when I finish my cardio, for example. One injury had me realize that, all this pride I feel as a bodybuilder or anything like that, if my toe hurts, I would lose all of these gains. I would lose all of these gains with a Z. I mean that. That if Allah wanted all of this self-proclamation, like everything I can say to you right now, if Allah wanted, I could have been complete shambles. I don't know how well of a lecture I gave today. But with any move he can make, he can entertain a complete mockery of us. But the thing that hit me really, really hard recently was when I noticed I didn't realize I had such an ego towards prayer. What I would feel when I would do sajda, I didn't realize I would do this, it was almost like an, aha, you see, God, I did it well, didn't I? Kind of feeling like, I did it. God, did you see that? And recently I realized that every motion I do in the prayer, it's not me, it's Allah. If Allah doesn't want me to drop my head down, if Allah doesn't want me to wake up for Fajr, I wouldn't. He's almost been humoring me. Like, it's almost been like him saying that you think any of this comes from you. It's not. It's the fact that I can show you that all these heights you've reached with a single snap, all this work you put in for a year and a half, I can make it all go away. I can easily make it all away. These job offers, they can disappear like this. The body you achieved, within how many days, if I put you in a coma, would you go to day 0, right? Even my spirituality, I feel so proud to say in a year, I'm so close to Allah. I know with the right moves, Allah can make this person from my life leave, this tribulation befall me, that I won't even want to pray anymore. So now, for example, every time I pray, I just thank Allah that He kept me at the willingness to pray to Him. And I think the most humiliating truth is right when you reach the top of the mountain, ironically, what do you realize? That you're the smallest person in the world, that you are really, really small. And this three-dimensional truth, I think the purpose of our existence and experience is to realize we're really nothing. We're really nothing without God. That you could be the best bodybuilder in the world. You could be the biggest genius, but with one accident, all of that can disappear. And to realize that you're completely dependent on God is the most empowering, ironically, the most empowering feeling in the world. And I really, really want everybody to experience this. And when you experience this, I mean this, you are immune to this dunya. They say, I'll leave you with this last kind of tradition, they say there are certain residents of Jannah that the angels will complain about. They say, these guys, they don't even like our gardens. The gardens you built for them, Allah, they don't even care for it. Allah says, because they don't care for it, because all they do is they try to attain me. They're obsessed with me. They're not even attracted by the perfumes of the gardens. The perfume of seeking me is all they want. And I think that the real realization that our pursuit is the infinite and we'll never reach it is the purpose of our existence. And with that, I really wanted to keep some question answers. So inshallah, we can do that. I'm sorry that I went overhand, but I really wanted this direction to show you that this idea of gaining, this gains thing, it should be to a higher goal. Not to say, though, I wanted to say that, remember, like with me, in 2019, I didn't have any of these goals of achieving these understandings about God. It was really, I just wanted to gain some muscle. The beauty, though, is any goal you set for yourself, small or big, can be the difference it makes for you to stay alive in this world and prosper and in the next world. So all you can do, and that's the beauty, is that Allah says, if you can benefit yourself, by God, you'll benefit. Allah didn't make it so we don't suffer in this world. If you could benefit yourself, if you can know yourself and do whatever it takes to hone yourself, you really, really can make or break the difference between a heaven of a life in this world and in the next. So I commend you for having any goal, big or small, and attack that goal and just focus on that one goal and witness that could be the difference between all the other goals in your life that you didn't even spell out can come true. Okay, let's have the question answer, inshallah.
Ali, thank you so much for that. I think I have a different perspective on my own training. I'm sure a lot of other folks to as well. I think that the concept of the triangulation, having the triangle of three components, I think that was, novel to a lot of us. And I really appreciate, everything that you said in particular that, we did have quite a few questions, so we're going to try to get through them. And if other folks have, other questions, please feel free to either, hop on and ask or type it in the chat. The first one we have from Brother Mahdi: does it make a difference in muscle gain whether you sleep 8 hours straight or take 1 to 3 hour naps?
Yeah, again, anecdotal. For me, I've realized that even the 4 hours I can get at night make a huge difference. I've had a few breaks to routine. That's normal, guys. That's another thing I wanted to say. Don't panic if one day your routine doesn't hold. But I found that the days that I have had, and that could just be a matter of getting used to a routine. Maybe routinely you'll find that, you can do the 1 hour to 3 hours, right? As long as you build a routine out of it and you don't see that that's detrimental for yourself, you do that. But for myself, I've seen, and from some things that I've read, that having that sleep and that shut-eye at night is beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
What's the next question?
And I want to reiterate, if folks want to, ask it yourself, please just unmute yourself and jump in. Next one we have, Brother Mustafa says, do you recommend taking creatine while on a caloric deficit?
While on a calorie deficit, probably not, especially not in Ramadan. You need a lot of water for creatine. Creatine, by the way, studies show that there are certain members in the population that have no effect on. I find for myself, there's almost no effect of creatine on me, so I tend not to take it as much. But when you're doing a cut, no, you don't need creatine. Only when you're regaining or you're doing a refeed, you need to do creatine.
We have another question that says, is taking a rest longer than 30 to 50 seconds detrimental at all?
No. So that, again, that's person to person. Something I read was really, really good about that. The purpose of rest is so that you can return to your exercise and do it so that ultimately the reason for the idea that the heuristic of 8 to 12 reps is you want to feel that tear, that hypertrophy. And sometimes if you don't rest enough, well, you're going to be completely lousy. You're going to not have enough energy. For some people, they'll need a lot more so they can go back and attack that work. The point is, when you're doing those 8 to 12 reps, again, the same perspective and the way that it is for prayers. If you're going to do 3 rakat, do it right. You rather do 3 rakat right than 4 rakat half-assedly, right? Same with working out. If you can do even 6 reps correctly versus like 15 in a way that's not correct, well, the 6 reps is correct. However much rest you find you need for that might vary from person to person. In general, 30 to 50 seconds is good. But you have to feel, did I just lift? And that's mind-muscle connection. Did I lift in a way that I actually worked my muscle or not? You'll have to experience that for yourself.
Another question says, how much muscle can we expect to gain within a year?
So this is very difficult to actually quantify muscle in terms of muscle weight. It's really difficult because everybody has a different distribution of muscle and fat, especially since any type of gain will always be the distribution of muscle and fat. So it's really hard to show. You can definitely just see it aesthetically on yourself. But within a year, for myself, for example, it's all the time you need. When you have a routine and you stick to it, it is literally all the time you need. And I'm telling you, and this is since we're just among Muslims, the reason why the non-Muslim world hasn't been able to do this and only does it with steroids, the use of steroids, is because they don't have routines like this. They don't have skeletons like Ramadan. And also, you know how much alcohol prevents muscle growth? Go read the literature on even just having one bout of alcohol. We don't have that. We don't have these issues. You can, as a Muslim, I'm telling you, we're in a very advantageous kind of place where we, as I said in the very beginning of my talk, we had enough science literature, and now we have like the wisdom of Islam. We put this together, you have freaks of nature in Muslim athletes, and we're only reaching that now. A year is more than enough to have all the muscle goals you want, if you have a good routine. Next.
We have another question that says, thoughts about progressive overload during Ramadan training?
You can apply progressive overload. That's another kind of anecdotal thing. I personally like progressive overload. For those that don't know it, that's just in terms of like, it's setting little goals for yourself to increase difficulty. So like if I'll then do 14 reps the next exercise instead of 12 reps of the same weight, that's a great sign because it's showing that you're getting stronger, and you're getting stronger meant you had more muscle. So you can do that, but really self-awareness and self-query. Your body is much more communicative than you think it is. It'll literally scream at you. Before any injury I've had, I've known for the 10 minutes prior, my body was screaming at me. I felt a little bit of pain. And now I've become very wary of it. When I feel a pain, I completely stop, or I'll like reduce my weights. I have no ego lifting anymore. One of the humiliating truths, as I said, the power it has on you is when you're lifting, you have no ego anymore. If you feel pain, you literally will see me as the guy lifting 5-pound dumbbells and curling them because I feel there's a pain coming on. As you get older, as you're reaching 30, you will get injured more and more. You have to be very careful. So don't do progressive overload for the sake of it. If you feel you have room and you feel you're not getting close to injury, go do that as well. Push yourself, for sure.
Another question we have is, sorry, do you have any advice on how to be consistent with salat?
Yeah, so it's that. For myself, the biggest kind of game changer for salat, I can tell you, and like perhaps maybe my closest brothers don't know because they haven't lived with me, but I was the worst with consistency with salat. As I said, salat was the way I approached everything else in my life. Procrastinated, kind of tasks that I may or may not have done. And now I'm telling you right now, I'm starting because in 10 minutes or so, it's adhan. It's something I panic about to have to do. It's something I'm excited to do. How did I gain that? I found that with working out, it really made it almost shameful. It almost became trivial to do salat. It's insulting to call salat trivial in that sense. But I mean that I'd be ashamed to think that I can't do 6 minutes of salat. If I said 20 minutes a day, I'm doing cardio, it's so easy. It's almost like a cherry on top. You'll find that and it's almost, and I mean this, by the way, my flexibility was so bad that I couldn't do quad stretches or hamstring stretches. But after I started working out properly and I did mobility training, I enjoy ruku. I actually enjoy it as a stretch, right? I enjoy the movements of prayer. Go look at rest day mobility training and be mesmerized by how many of those look like salat. I mean it. And then you start to gain an appreciation of salat and you start to treat it consistently, like it's actually like, I consider salat the cardio of the soul. I consider reading the cardio of the mind. These are things where I call it cardio because you'll have voices in your head to tell you not to do it. For me now, the way that I approach life is I love those voices. I say, bring them on. So salat is my opportunity to say, I've shut the voice down. So you become competitive, right? In a way, so I'm competitive towards my salat. And that's a good thing. It could be good. Watch out to not become obsessive, right? So you don't want to panic if it's like 7:45 and you haven't done your mavah. But it's also important to have a little bit of that perfectionism. Perfectionism is important. Make little goals. For example, when I do cardio, sorry, I'm going to finish this question in 30 seconds, but this is, I forgot to say this. Every cardio, though, I said in a year and a half, has had a different flavor to it. What do I mean? Every cardio, I say, can I just up it by 1 second? By 2 seconds? Can I make it so that I don't look down at the time after I say, for example, 6 songs? I count in terms of songs. What do I do for my salat? Same thing. I tell myself before I start my salat, can I make this salat the perfect salat? And then I'll fail and it's fine, but I did a little bit better. I'm recently trying to make the goal, can I make it so that every verse and every word that I'm saying, I truly understand in my salat? It's so fun this way. Salat, every salat of yours has a different taste, has a different smell, right? And this is the beauty of routine. You think routine means boring. Unfortunately, the Western culture has made us think routine means boring. No, routine doesn't. The kid who's cradled through lullaby, our nature is really in demand for routine. And Allah knew this when He gave us routine jurisprudence. You'll see routine could be actually the variety for your life in a weird paradoxical way, right? So in the way that, for example, I cook, my trainees know, I put different spices in every meal I have. And I put it in one of my slides, I didn't read it off, but I don't have the same meal in a row. And the same with my salats, I'll approach them with a different spirit every time. And that's how it helps with my consistency. Next question.
Next question says, what is your opinion on deadlifts, in parentheses, especially during Ramadan?
Yeah, deadlifts, be very careful. I only started doing deadlift. I said I trained for 10 years. I only started doing deadlifts the last year. It is very, very important. It's one of the staple lifts. But my point being, it wasn't necessary. So it's important for certain strength aspects of your body, but it's very dangerous for injury. So you really want to go light on deadlift. No ego. Who are you doing it for? It's for yourself. As long as you're getting hypertrophy and right form, that's the important part, right? And so deadlifts, if you've already started doing it, continue doing it, but know that you have to be very, very careful. As you said, you're very wise to say during Ramadan as well, you have to be a little bit more careful during Ramadan as well. So there's definitely workouts that you can do that go around deadlift as well, especially doing it in the home gyms that we have.
Building on that, does that apply both for standard deadlift and RDL or just for a standard?
Both deadlifts as well. Yeah.
In your program, you only hit some muscle groups once per week. Why is that?
Those are the smaller muscle groups that you tend to need to do them less. And again, remember what I said about looking at your needs. For example, my really dear friend Jad, his shoulders lag where my chest lags. So he does shoulder twice a week, right? And I do chest twice a week. When you start out, start with the basics of doing one, and don't have them twice. But then you'll see as you get better and more used to it. As I said, with prayers and with cardio, you can up it. I've upped it over time. The addition for chest was the last 2 months I've done that. So you can start doing that for yourself.
Mm-hmm. And if folks want to send private questions, you can send it to me and I can read them as well.
Yeah, I've seen some private ones.
People.
Let me answer a few. One person asked a private question. They said, does lifting weights have an effect on height during puberty? Great question. Our fathers love to tell us that. It's not that it affects. I've seen 1 or 2 things about that in the literature, really shoddy studies. It's not that it does at all. They say if you play soccer, it affects your height. I say it's not that, but it's that when you're younger, mobility is more important than strength. So if you're doing it at the cost of mobility, then that's an issue, because then you can get some serious joint injuries. At the end of the day, remember, guys, that you're like a car. You have a duration, right? It's like, or a computer, right? If I've used this computer for 4 years, eventually it'll break down. If you start earlier, you will find you might get injured sooner. I know guys, for example, the same guys in the locker room, the Anavar guys, the guys that are talking about hormones, they're 22-year-olds. They were already having the same injuries that I got when I was like 20, 27, 26. So you might get injured sooner. That is one fear. So yeah, you don't want to lift too early. I recommend for men to start truly hitting the gym at like 19, 20. And before that, mobility, exercise, sports is really important as well.
I have another one. Do you recommend a trap bar deadlift over conventional for a beginner?
Yeah, trap bar deadlift could be a really, really good start for a beginner to kind of wean yourself off of the trap bars, kind of like tricycles. It's really, really good. I personally would have done that. If I had access to it, trap bar deadlift could be really, really good. These are really, really wise questions. They're already implying that you guys are seeing it the right way. There's no need for ego. Honestly, when I hit the gym, I was really doing 5-pound dumbbell bicep curls, and to whose judgment? So yes, do it that way, and then you're going to have longevity when it comes to your back health.
I think that's all the questions I've seen. If anybody else,
I see. What is your take on bro split workout routine? What can you clarify with the bro? There's so many bro split workout routine. Do you mean push pull leg? If that's what you mean, the push pull leg thing. That remember what I said about routine, guys. You know what? I really mean this. I really mean the different body parts each day, they said, for 4 or 5 days. Okay, I'll answer it this way that I just asked my friend this question. I said, counterfactually, imagine I was never doing abs for the 1.5 years. How would I look like? Would I look any different? What do you guys think? I think I would not have looked as different as I think I would have, because when you're doing other workouts, you're still working your core. Now, it's like you asking me, imagine for a 1.5 years, you were such a saint in the way that you did the bro split. And then you ask me, what if I didn't do the bro split? I think not much of a difference. Consistency is key, right? So if you're going to do chest Monday, back Tuesday, legs Wednesday, he's writing it for me. Shoulder Thursday, arms Friday. You do that with a 1.5 years with the sustainable tips that I gave you in terms of adjusting and also having the other aspects of your life. Because remember, the other spiritual health will keep you, by the way, guys, I didn't say this enough, will keep you from being weak when it comes to having a lazy day. I've had some trainees who are like, yo, I don't feel like it. But you'll be surprised if the guy was feeling mentally healthy and spiritually healthy, he wouldn't feel that way towards the gym. So if you're actually honing those other things and you're kept a routine, even with the bro split, you'll have all the gains you can ever imagine, even with the bro split, right? As long as maybe the bro split has some nuances to it that might be bad for you that you experience in time, and you could adjust it, and you might find yourself converging to my split, for example, but maybe it won't be, right? And that is an anecdotal tip.
I see another question here. Do you have any specific advice for a 16-year-old lifter?
Yeah, so for a 16-year-old lifter, I would say that it's great that you're already striving to do the lifting. And my advice for you, I don't know if you were there throughout the talk, was you are at such an advantage because a lot of us didn't have access to a lot of the scientific literature and the things already. 10 years ago, I surely didn't. And so you have access to not only having the opportunity to do these lifts with good form, which is my first bit of advice for you, is hit up YouTube and look at good form and start now. Because if you have bad form, same with other aspects of our life. We have bad salat tendencies. It's really difficult to fix that after 10 years. You start with good form now, and it will take you 2 years even. And use the fact that you know that you have like 2 years of a buffer before you even need to lift, to really look at good form and even do weightless exercises, right? And just get good form. By the way, for one of my friends is here, he knows that I discovered recently, there's recent findings that you can get muscle gain without any weights whatsoever. You could do bicep curls by just tensing your biceps. And people actually do this when they're in prison, they'll do this and they'll get massive muscle growth. So you can literally do this for yourself, but you can now focus on form, right? Because there's no kind of way of cheating anymore. So look at YouTube videos and look at form. And also the last bit is, if you saw my lecture, is that try to achieve a balance on the other aspects of your life as well, those other nodes. And you'll find how much of an advantage they are in terms of making you never quit out on going to the gym. My dear friend Jad is here. He knows we never gave up on the gym. A year and a half, we never skipped a gym day once, because we were also attacking the other nodes. We were also striving in our careers and in terms of our salat. It's almost, you feel embarrassed. If you did well on the 2, they triangulated. They forced you to do well in the 3rd dimension, right? So really pay attention, bro, on your spiritual health and your mental health early. They'll be the difference that when you're 26, 10 years from now, you have continued lifting because of it.
Alhamdulillah. I think, alhamdulillah, this generation, they're also in a better, spot, because social media, I mean, the motivation is there, right? I mean, you can follow influencers who say, hey, like, this is what I'm doing, this is how I can be motivated. And also amongst their own group. I mean, I saw 4 of them, 5 of them today, they went to the gym together, right?
That's it.
My generation, we did not have that culture of fitness. Other than like soccer on Saturdays, we didn't have that culture, right? And, it's Vaughan, I think they're an advantage. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, also I see there's an embracing of bromance. I think we didn't really have that 7 years ago. But people really, and there's just so many, I don't know, I started liking a bunch of Instagram posts of these 2 guys that have like romance to the max. And I feel we all like it because deep down it's something we wish we had. Because a lot of and I really mean this, maybe even for the 16-year-olds, I think a lot of temptations would have been prevented if we embraced bromance a little bit more. Take this with a grain of salt. I don't mean it the way you might think. But the need for a man to be intimate and to communicate and to cry to another brother, to cry on the shoulder of another brother, right? How taboo was that? But we need that. And to encourage each other. You see how good it feels if someone comes up to you in the gym and says, bro, you're looking big. Right? And we have that recently. And it's a really great time we have in terms of encouraging each other, and sisters as well. I mean, these opportunities of really within the same gender to kind of in the same groups that we have. Often it's like taboo for guys to salute each other and to like hug each other. Do it, embrace each other, and go to the gym together. It really, really helps. It's one of the best experiences just to work out with like your best friend. It really needs, and to pray beside your best friend is just as powerful, right? Or to work beside your best friend is powerful. The same goes. These are 3 dimensions, 3 sides of like a 3-sided coin. Someone says, I have only access to dumbbells. What types of exercises? Like, you have already access to more than you need. Dumbbells, literally any workout that you think you can do. So let's say bench press, look up. And I'm giving you guys the self-sufficiency here. I'm not just going to tell you a workout here. Go on YouTube and search dumbbell chest workouts, right? You'll get the perfect workouts, right? So in this sense, bro, don't paralyze yourself with questions that you think that you won't have access to. You do have access to them. Go and do it anecdotally. I find these are real details that you'll see that by actually going to the gym and just, literally just I have like dumbbells sitting beside me, picking up the dumbbells and thinking, okay, today I want to work chest. You'll even there's new lifts that I'm seeing invented that I've never seen before. It's because of mind-muscle connection. For example, I have a dumbbell here. There's a new workout people do. They do this. It's called the pushover or pullover, something like this. I've never seen that before. Probably was some guy that had such good mind-muscle connection. He's like, hey, if I move it like this and I feel my chest, it's a thing. And he'll create a lift out of it. So really just hit the gym and use those dumbbells, do push-ups, do anything it takes, and have a routine about it, and you will see double the size on your chest in the end of the year.
I think we've exhausted all of our questions. I really appreciate it. I'm getting a message right now. My brother says this is very powerful knowledge. I need the recording. So I know people have been, I really appreciate what you've been saying. We have one more question. If someone is able to maintain a good form, what do you think about strength training 1 to 3 rep range?
I think it depends on your goals, right? So I like that if you say strength training, if you're really trying to gain strength, where paradoxically, if you define strength as being able to lift something heavy for 3 reps, well, of course, then training for 1 to 3 reps is going to be beneficial, right? If that's your goal. And it's important that I remind you that my goals will be different than yours, right? My goals, for example, I like to have a really low kind of body fat, kind of cut look, right? But if you want to go for more of that power lifter bulk look, that is actually the way that you can do. You can reduce your weight. Generally, maybe not 1 to 3. Some people say up to 4 to 6. But if 1 to 3, you see that you're gaining more size, it could be helpful. The thing I have to say that you have to be aware of is that thing I said about cortisol, stress. You're feeling like you're very stressed because you're doing heavy weights. That's also your body screaming at you, saying something's not right here. Your muscle will grow, but your joints won't. And I know a lot of issues with ACs, like these are shoulder joints, from people that lift a lot of bench. Myself and my dear friend were experiencing is that you'll reach a point when you get older where you just won't be able to lift as heavy. And those kind of 1 to 3 rep ranges are dangerous with that because you tend to lift heavier there. But it's good if your goal, for example, is to have more volume, for example, and less cut. But if you want to have a cut physique, you'd have to go up higher reps.
All right, I think we'll close it at there. I want to thank you again, Brother Ali, for honestly this extremely enlightening and engaging conversation. I encourage every one of our brothers, especially the younger brothers, follow him on social media, follow his academic and professional work as well. I mean, like we said, the triangle, so support each other where we can. And, I know there's a lot we can also learn from you in that realm as well. So I really wanted to appreciate, and thank you for your time and really sharing with us these strategies and, thinking about the bigger picture of fitness and having that that spiritual, that mind-body connection. So I think that's really, really important.
Thank you, bro. And I just wanted to leave the brothers with this is that, yeah, if you contact me on Instagram, I just want to insist to you guys, guys, you can make your own programs. And I mean this. If any, do not hire a personal trainer and pay them whatever amount that it takes. I was already trying to charge pennies because I felt already guilty because I know it's a sham. It really is. You have all of it, all that it takes in order to achieve all your goals, but do a better job than a personal trainer will, because a personal trainer at the end of the day, they can't hold your hand forever. And you'll gain a dependence on them such that if they let go, you're gonna collapse. Especially if you're starting early, like the 16-year-old, start independently and you find that you won't need anybody. And that's the way that it works with us, right? Like if you just depend on God, you won't need anybody else. Similarly with your workouts, these questions you have are great. Most of them you'll find they're anecdotal. These will be questions that you'll see answered immediately as you start lifting. So go and literally immerse yourself, build a routine and stick to it. If that means 20 minutes at the gym, I'm telling you, you're going to get massive gains, massive. If you go 20 minutes at the gym every single day for 4 days a week, just do it and make a routine. And you'll see each of these questions you have will naturally be resolved as you work out.
Of course, and what better time than Ramadan to start? So inshallah, everybody can use these, and we'll see you next Ramadan. Everybody will have the gains, the spiritual and the mind and the body
Inshallah.
Gains, inshallah.
Inshallah, guys. Thank you so much for everything, and thank you so much, Reza and Mohebban, for organizing this.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Hopefully, we'll talk to you soon then.
All right, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, guys.
Assalamu alaikum, Hajj. Thank you. Khuda Hafiz to everyone.
Hafiz.